Well, let's see. Last few videos I've done, I've been further away from home. I did a 4-part series, if you've been watching my channel here, where I went down into the Kiamichi Mountains in June, and I camped there, and I had enough footage to do 4 videos around that. Hope you enjoyed those. And then followed that, I was in southern Hughes County, hiking around some creek bottoms near the South Canadian River. This week I'm back on my own property, not far from the house. It's really hot. This is July 19, and it is 100 degrees. Earlier today it was. Right now it's close to 7, cooled off a little bit, and I wanted to come out in the woods and do another video. I received a report through my email this week that's from Leflore County that I wanted to share with you guys. And also I want to start off giving a shout out to a couple of people. Cornell, who has the No Such Thing podcast. I've done an interview with him on that, and he's asked me to do another one, so we're going to try to get together hopefully this week and do another interview. So looking forward to that. If y'all haven't checked out his website, I'll leave a link in the description. Check it out. He's got some good content, some good interviews. It's not all about Bigfoot, but he's got some good stuff on there. And Cornell gave me a hard time. He said, "You're always wearing the same shirt and stuff when you go out hiking and stuff." Well, I usually do. That's called my hiking shirt. So just for Cornell, I put on a different shirt and even a different hat. So maybe he won't give me a hard time this time, but that's okay if he does. But anyway, shout out to Cornell and No Such Thing podcast. Another thing I wanted to share a little bit is I get comments about things being concerned about in the woods. I get people say, "Hey, watch out for ticks, watch out for snakes, watch out for this," and I appreciate the concern. I'm not especially concerned about the snakes. They just I like snakes, and you just don't step on them. Watch where you're stepping, watch where you put your hands, you'll be okay. Ticks, on the other hand, that's a real danger with the stuff they spread. And another thing you got to watch for, and I thought, and we may hear it again, but I think there's a wild hog over here across the creek. I could hear tromping around earlier, and tell you what, you get between a wild hog and its babies, that is a very dangerous place to be. I've said in the past, the only thing more dangerous to come between than a mother hog and her babies is a televangelist and his offering plate. It's probably the only thing more dangerous than that. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in here and share this account that I just received. Got permission to talk about it, and this is from Leflore County, Oklahoma, and this is very recent. This is this year actually. And I asked the guy, I said, "Hey, is it all right if I share this on an upcoming video?" And he said, "Yeah, that would be fine." And all he asked was that I not use his name or the exact location of this incident. So keeping that in mind, all I'm going to leave it down is it's in Leflore County, which, if you keep up with Bigfoot sightings in Oklahoma, that probably has the most sightings, or if not the most, reported sightings of the Sasquatch. It's right there near the top in this state. So anyway, I'm just gonna read this as he sent it to me, and later on I got another shout out to another YouTube channel I want to share, and it's got some other more controversial stuff on it, so I hope y'all will stay tuned and listen to that as well. But on this one here, this in 2020, so this year, April 16th, 2020, he said, "My wife, son, my nephew, my nephew's girlfriend, and I camped at a non-disclosed area near," I'll leave that out. "This was the second time that my family visited this area." Excuse me. "On our first camping trip, we had nothing out of the ordinary happen, although I had the feeling of being watched." And I just got to interrupt right there. I truly believe we still have a sixth sense in that. All of us that have been out in the woods much, we get that feeling of being watched sometimes. And I've learned over the years not to ignore that. So going right back onto his email. "So on this camping trip, I included a firearm just in case we may encounter bear or hogs. Throughout the evening, all 5 people camped there could hear something moving through the brush, but we all wrote it off to regular night sounds. After having dinner, my son, nephew, and I hiked off into the wilderness for a while, but returned to camp after a few minutes because the darkness made it impossible to maneuver through the undergrowth. After talking by the campfire until around 1 a.m., we all called it a night and each retired to our tents and were soon asleep. Now, those of y'all who live in the city, I can tell you, when you're out in the wilderness and in the woods, when it gets dark, it's really dark. There's no street lamps, there's none of that to brighten the night, so it gets really dark when you're out in the middle of nowhere. He says here, I was asleep for approximately an hour when both my wife and I were awakened by something large sniffing the tent near my wife's head. During this camping trip, we brought along our dog, a cane corso, a large mastiff breed. Startled after hearing the sniffing, my wife whispered that something was right outside our tent. Grabbing my firearm, I yelled to my nephew that something was in our camp, and I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. At that time, I called for my dog to come with me, but she would not exit the tent. I walked around to the back side of our tent to where the sniffing originated and could only see a shadow headed off into the trees. Because I am very protective of my wife, I fired 2 rounds above the shadow and waited to see if whatever was out there was going to return. It did not. Since that happened, I have returned to the same area and camped, but I try to remain awake throughout the night. I have posted photos of the tree breaks that was near the area where we camp and even heard vocalizations which he describes as a long howl similar to the howl a wolf would make. These events have been witnessed by 6 people, so I know that it's not an overactive imagination. He goes on to say, I'm a professional in the tax field, work for the government, but I'm not embarrassed about what happened. He said, matter of fact, it has me curious, and I will continue going there, hoping for a glimpse of the big fellow. Now, I'm going to throw in my take on this before I go to his second part. When I first read that they heard sniffing at the edge of the tent, my first thought was a black bear, which there are a lot of black bear in Leflore County, all the way down through McCurtain, well, even out in this direction now. But what got me thinking a little bit different when he said his dog, which is a big mastiff type breed, tried to get it to come out and it would not follow him. I've been out in the mountains in southeast Oklahoma when a bear comes to camp, and dogs will chase a bear like crazy. This dog did not want anything to do with what was around their camp. So anyway, I emailed him back and I said, thank you for sharing your encounter with me. I'm familiar with that area, and I have a question about the shadow that you saw heading away from you. Was it walking upright, or was it a quadruped? Also, is it okay if I include this account in an upcoming video? I will not use your name. And as I said earlier, he did give me permission. He just asked that I not use his name or the exact location. So he answered me this. He said, yes, I believe it was bipedal. That is the reason I did not shoot directly at it. On our last visit, it was the howling that alarmed me. I've roamed the woods most of my life and am familiar with most night sounds. What I heard that night, at first I thought of a wolf, but a lot deeper in tone. As the howl reached higher in intensity, coyotes started yelping along with it, but further in the distance. And I just let you know, I've got another individual from that area that has been communicating with me, describing the same thing, this long drawn out deep howl that when it really gets to going, he'll hear coyotes join in with it. So this is the second in a very recent time report that I've received with that same thing. But he said, but the night of the sniffing by the tent, it was on my wife's side of the tent, and it was very distinct. I laid there and listened for what seemed like an eternity, but it was only seconds. My dog sat right up and looked in that direction, but did not bark, which is rather unusual. At that time, my wife whispered softly that something was sniffing the tent right beside her head. Like I stated in my first email, I yelled to my nephew that something was in our camp. After not getting a response, I unholstered my pistol and unzipped the tent. Stepping out into the darkness, I called to my dog to go with me, but she would not leave the tent. Now that's very interesting there. about the dog. Like I say, bears come into camp. Have not seen a dog yet, especially a big breed like that won't give chase to a bear. He said, I don't remember hearing it walking through the forest, but it had to have moved away from the tent itself, because when I saw the shadow, it was approximately 50 feet from the tent in the trees moving northward. At that time, I fired either 2 or 3 shots. The reason I say this is my wife said I fired 3, but I thought it was 2 rounds. The rounds I used were tracer rounds, so I could see where the rounds traveled. The shadow moved away very quickly, but I could hear the leaves being rustled as it made its way to the road and across to another heavily wooded area. I returned to my tent but could not sleep the remainder of the night, understandably. I will say that I may have invited this by leaving apples in 3 different trees on a path about a quarter of a mile from camp, and thought, okay, why are you leaving apples in a tree if you're not trying to invite something? And then I read on down, he said, I've been interested in the Bigfoot phenomena most of my life. That is the reason for our camping trip there at this place, to look for possible evidence of the big fella. After actually having something like this happen, I'm very apprehensive about continuing this search. My wife and I have traveled all over the country hoping for a glimpse of this creature. And I'll say to this individual, thanks for sharing that, and I hope that's informative or of interest to all you guys. It was to me. And now the other thing that I wanted to mention in this is, if you've been paying attention to this on the internet, there's all kinds of stuff, and I've commented about it in the past, this supposed massacre at Bluff Creek. All of you are, if you're into Bigfoot at all, you know about the Patterson-Gimlin film from October 20, 1967. That was the year I was born, where they got the famous footage of a female Sasquatch walking along a creek bed. Now, in recent years, these rumor mill has popped up conveniently after most everybody involved is dead and unable to defend themselves, about some, and I've facetiously say, Ninja Canadian Sasquatch kill team come down and killed like the female Sasquatch's babies and several other Sasquatch in the area and all that. And I've always said, why don't they ask Bob Gimlin about it? He's the only one left alive, and he's, in my view, a very upstanding gentleman of good character. And and I think for a while he tried to kind of stay out of it, but I went on the internet today and I found an interview, and I'm going to give a shout out to this YouTube channel. I don't know much, anything about them really, but hats off to them for doing this interview with Bob Gimlin. I think the interview is like a year old, and it's called the Bigfoot Zone, or ECBRO, and I'm giving a shout out to them, and like I say, hats off to them for giving Bob the opportunity to respond to all of this stuff. I mean, all this manipulated photographs saying they see blood splashed all over the ground and all of this stuff. I mean, come on, guys. But anyway, they do this interview with Bob Gimlin, and he lets it known exactly what happened, which is the narrative that most of us are familiar with. And one thing he points out in this video, and by the way, I'm going to leave the link to this video interview in the description. I encourage you guys to check it out. Don't just believe the rumor mills. Look at it, listen to it from the guy that was actually there and witnessed it. But he pointed out Roger Patterson was looking for a Sasquatch to get evidence that hopefully he could make some money with. He wanted to, and his intention was to use proceeds from the Patterson film to finance an expedition over into the to the Himalayas looking for the Yeti. Of course, he did not. He died not long after that of I believe it's Hodgkin's lymphoma, if I'm remembering correctly. And Bob went on with his life. But anyway, he brought it up. He said, look, if Roger had a body or something, man, that would have really made some money. Also, some of the very familiar names in the field that have sadly passed away. John Green, who wrote probably one of the most comprehensive books, collection of Bigfoot sightings in the world, called Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us. if he had had access to that kind of evidence, these are people that wanted to bring this evidence out to the public to prove the existence. You had John Green, you had Renee DeHenden, Bob Titmus, all of these guys wanted to prove that this was real. Some of them maybe to make money off of it, some of them just for the scientific discovery of it. But anyway, I'm going to stop right there. If you've heard me talk about this before, you know how I feel about it. I don't think anybody should be, for lack of a better word, slandered or put into rumors as Mr. Gimlin had. But you know, if by chance Mr. Gimlin happens to watch this video, I'm going to say hats off to you, man, and I believe you. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to leave a link to that video interview in the description, as well as what was the other link to Cornell's No Such Thing podcast as well. And like I say, Cornell, he talked to me yesterday, I believe, and he wants us to get together and do another interview. So I'm looking forward to that. So with that being said, I'm going to call it a day and get out of this heat and go enjoy some air conditioning. You guys stay safe, stay healthy. Till next time.